Well, good evening. It's the second week of Advent, and we are talking about anticipation this week. Last week we talked about the subject of hope, and we looked at the prophecy in the Old Testament from Isaiah when he talks about the coming of the Messiah. And of course, we kind of explored this idea. What would it be like to live in a time when God was silent, and how do we deal with that when it feels like God is silent with us? And so we talked about hope within that context. This week we're doing anticipation. Anticipation draws us quite close to the prophecies specifically about the coming of Jesus. The ones, not the prophecies so much, right? We talked about that last week, but the actual angel coming and giving the announcement of Jesus' birth. That's next week. This week, though, is when the angel Gabriel comes and speaks to Zechariah in the temple and tells him about the coming of his son who's going to be born. But let me read you the passage out of Luke chapter 1. I'm going to read about 21 verses here, and then we'll kind of break some of this down. In the days of King Herod of Judea, there was a priest of Abijah's division named Zechariah. His wife was from the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. Both were righteous in God's sight, living without blame according to all the commands and requirements of the Lord. But they had no children because Elizabeth could not conceive, and both of them were well along in years. When his division was on duty and he was serving as priest before God, it happened that he was chosen by lot, according to the custom of the priesthood, to enter the sanctuary of the Lord and burn incense. At the hour of incense, the whole assembly of the people were praying outside. An angel of the Lord appeared to him, standing at the right of the altar of incense. When Zechariah saw him, he was terrified and overcome with fear. But the angel said to him, "Do not be afraid, Zechariah, because your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you will name him John. There will be joy and delight for you, and many will rejoice at his birth. For he will be great in the sight of the Lord, and will never drink wine or beer. He will be filled with the Holy Spirit while still in his mother's womb. He will turn many of the children of Israel to the Lord their God, and he will go before him in the spirit and power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of fathers to their children and the disobedient to the understanding of the righteous, to make ready for the Lord a prepared people." "How can I know this?" Zechariah asked the angel, "for I am an old man, and my wife is well along in years." The angel answered him, "I am Gabriel, who stands in the presence of God, and I was sent to speak to you and tell you this good news. Now listen, you will become silent and unable to speak until the day these things take place, because you did not believe my words, which will be fulfilled in their proper time." Meanwhile, the people were waiting for Zechariah, amazed that he had stayed so long in the sanctuary. When he did come out, he could not speak to them. Then they realized that he had seen a vision in the sanctuary. He was making signs to them and remained speechless. When the days of his ministry were completed, he went back home. After these days, his wife Elizabeth conceived and kept herself in seclusion for 5 months. She said, "The Lord has done this for me. He has looked with favor in these days to take away my disgrace among the people." 400 years. The Israelites had gone without ever hearing a message from the Lord. As we talked about last week, it's not that God wasn't working during those times. It's not that he didn't perform miracles, in fact. We know that he did. However, he hadn't spoken to the people. So the idea of him coming and speaking to Zechariah in this moment, this is a pretty significant moment. If Gabriel's coming down to give them the recipe for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, it's significant because God is speaking again, right? But it's not that. Of course, it's something much, much bigger. The message of Gabriel to Zechariah in that day is that the time has come for God to enter the world. Actually, it's time for God to set the stage for his coming into the world. And setting the stage will be done through Zechariah and Elizabeth's son, who will be born to them in their old age, and his name will be John. There are some interesting things about this story that I think bear our pausing and reflecting. Let's talk about the setting. Gabriel comes to Zechariah when he's in the temple, performing his priestly duties, which included the lighting of incense. Now, when the temple was built, actually let's back up even further than that. Before the temple was the tabernacle. This tabernacle was designed by God and was built by God's people and was created for them to have a place to commune with God. That was what the tabernacle was for. As the Israelites would wander through the desert, if you read through the period of them wandering through the desert, they would have this tabernacle and they would take it down and they would carry it along with them, and they would erect it and put it all back up whenever they would set up camp. And for however long they would set up camp, this tabernacle was at the center of Israel's life. Now, quite literally, there are 12 tribes of Israel, 3 tribes to the north, 3 tribes to the south, 3 tribes to the east, 3 tribes to the west. Every time they set up camp, that's how they would set up. And the tabernacle would be in the center. And this would be the place where they would come and they would speak to the Lord. They would come and talk to him, and the priests would speak to the people. They would get their messages. That was the purpose of the tabernacle. Whenever God wanted to speak to the people, he did so through the tabernacle. Now, if he wanted to talk to Moses, he could do it through a burning bush or on a mountain. If he wanted to talk to Elijah, he could do it in a cave, right? If he wanted to talk to Jonah, he could do it in the belly of a whale. But when God was speaking to the people, and not prophecies about how they needed to repent or whatever, when God was speaking to the people and specifically talking about the ways he wanted them to live or how he was going to bless them and those sorts of things, that happened at the temple. The original purpose of God and his people were that the priesthood at the temple would be the place and the people through which God would speak. More about the people in a minute. But let's focus on the temple here. This temple that is being used here as Gabriel is coming and speaking to the people. God is going to come and he's going to speak to them at the temple. That's not a mistake. This has been the intention of God since the creation of the tabernacle, clear back in the book of Exodus and Leviticus, and now it is how God is going to continue to speak to his people. After these years of silence, how is God going to come? Is he going to send a prophet? No. I mean, he is. That's going to be John eventually. But the first time God speaks, when God breaks his silence, it is in the temple. This is not an accident. So that's the setting. Let's talk about the people. Let's talk about the bearers of the message of God that's going to come. Of course, it comes from Gabriel, but who does Gabriel bring the message to? To Zechariah and Elizabeth. Now, Zechariah and Elizabeth are a couple of people who have been serving God for many years. Zechariah, it says, is of Abijah's division. It's an interesting idea that he's from Abijah's division. This dates back to the Old Testament and Chronicles when David is getting ready, is preparing the nation for the building of the temple. God came to him and, David wanted to build the temple, and God said, no, David, you're not allowed to build the temple. Your son can build the temple, but you can't build the temple. And so what David did was he began to prepare everything for the building of the temple. So he prepared the stuff that was needed to build the temple, and he gathered it all and made sure it was ready, and he talked to his son about plans and all those things. But one of the things he did was he created this breakdown of the Levitical tribe. The Levitical tribe was the tribe that was responsible for the duties of caring for the temple or the tabernacle prior to the temple, right? So now the temple is going to be built. So how are we going to do this in an organized manner? So he kind of split them up into these groups, these families, and these families would each take part for a certain amount of weeks. Every year they would do it a few weeks here, then they'd take a break for a few months and do it another few weeks. There's 12 different groups. 12 different families. Abijah's was the 8th division. And they had specific times of the year, every year, when they would care for the temple. And so the readers, the original readers, the Jewish people who would have read that he was from Abijah's division, they would have known, like, okay, so this was this time of year, or it was this time of year, kind of depending on whether it was their first time or second time on the calendar that they were carrying for the temple. But just suffice to say that the importance of this linkage is that even when we're talking in this New Testament, this new covenant, this new message is getting ready to be built, God says, but listen, we're building this on the foundation of things that have been going on for thousands of years. Like this Abijah's division that David created back in Chronicles, back before the building of the temple. This is still being in use today, even though for a period of time, of course, it wasn't when the temple was destroyed and they were sent off to live in foreign lands. But when they came back and they rebuilt the temple, what did they do? They rebuilt the temple, but they also reconstructed these divisions. And so this is just a really neat way for us to see Zechariah's family heritage that they had gained. But not just him. It's interesting, his wife also has a priestly lineage. She comes, it tells us that she was one who came from the daughters of Aaron. Her name was Elizabeth. It says this wife of his was not just nobody. She also came from the order of Aaron. She came from the daughters of Aaron. Aaron was known as really the first high priest. We think of Moses as the mouthpiece of God, but it was his brother Aaron who God chose to be the one who was the high priest over the people of Israel. And so as Aaron was a high priest, and then he would pass that responsibility on. So of him came Elizabeth eventually. So you have these two people whose lives and whose families' lives have been dedicated to what? Communicating to God on behalf of the people and communicating to people on behalf of God, because they were from priestly families. And so what's going on here? What we see is that even in this, as God has chosen the place, he's chosen the temple, now he's choosing the people who are going to bear this message, who are going to bring John into this world. And who are these two people going to be? Well, they're going to be Zechariah and Elizabeth, who come from this long line of families that have dedicated their lives to speaking to the people on God's behalf. And guess what they're going to do now? They're going to bear a son who's going to take the message out into the world that the Messiah is on his way. That's it's not coincidental at all. This is a very exciting time, I think, for Zechariah and for Elizabeth and for the people of Israel. Okay, so that's the setting. It's the people. What's the message? The message is that Elijah is coming. Do not be afraid, Zechariah, because your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you will name him John. You will turn many of the children of Israel to the Lord their God, and he will go before him in the spirit and power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of fathers to their children, and the disobedient to the understanding of the righteous, to make ready for the Lord a prepared people. There's a lot there. So let's just start here. Do not be afraid, Zechariah, because your prayer has been heard. I have to think that at that point, Zechariah wanted to stop Gabriel and say, hold on. If you're talking about my prayer to have a son, I prayed that 50 years ago, right? Like, he's an old man at this point. Like, wait, I didn't pray this yesterday or last week or last month. I prayed that a long time ago. I've been done praying that prayer for quite a few years now. I'm too old to have a son. They are beyond childbearing years. And Elizabeth, his wife, she's old as well, but it tells us specifically that Elizabeth is barren. Barren women in the Old Testament gave birth through miraculous means to some pretty important people. Isaac was born to a barren woman. Jacob, born to a barren woman. Joseph, born to a barren woman. Samuel, the great priest, born to a barren woman. All of these people in the Old Testament come through miraculous means to a barren woman. John is going to come in the spirit of those people. He is going to be, according to Jesus, the greatest of the prophets. speaking of John, Gabriel also tells us that he's going to be named John, this baby that you're going to have. You're going to have a baby, and he's not going to be Zechariah. He's not going to be named after his family. He's not going to be named after his dad or his grandpa or an uncle or some distant relative. He's not going to have the family's name. He's not carrying on the family's name. Instead, he's going to bear the name John. What does John mean? John means that Yahweh is a gracious giver. Yahweh, God, the Lord, is a gracious giver. Now put a pin in that for just a second, because I want to read you something. It's from the passage. I already read this a couple of times. Let me read it to you again. This is what Gabriel tells Zechariah concerning John. He will go before him, meaning the Lord, in the spirit and power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the fathers to their children, and the disobedient to the understanding of the righteous, to make ready for the Lord a prepared people. This is the first message they've heard from the Lord in 400 years. Do you want to guess what the last message they heard from the Lord before that period of silence? Let me read it to you. It's in Malachi chapter 4. Look, I am going to send you the prophet Elijah before the great and terrible day the Lord comes, and he will turn the hearts of fathers to their children and the hearts of children to their fathers. Otherwise, I will come and strike the land with a curse. Now, what's he saying here? It's like, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to come and I'm going to turn people to their family members. We're going to create relationships where there weren't any. We're going to have reconciliation amongst God's people and between God and his people. Or I'm going to send a curse. What's John's name? Yahweh is a gracious giver. What's the message here? There's no curse coming. The Lord has instead chosen to send the blessing of first sending John, who's going to be this bearer of this gracious good news that someone is coming who is even greater than he is. Because John's just a man. He's just a guy. He's just a messenger. And he says, there's one coming behind me whose sandals I'm not worthy to tie. Oh, but man, what does John have? He has this message of hope. He's going to bring reconciliation to the world. This story, when we begin to understand the setting of the temple and the bearers of this message, the ones who were both descended from the priestly line in Israel, and when you see the message itself, can we do anything but have some excitement about this message, this Christmas message? When we talk about these stories, there's a lot I suppose I could say here, but let me say a couple things very quickly. First of all, in some ways, we are called to be like John, to prepare the way for the Lord, to go into our family situations and workplaces and neighborhoods and take the message of Jesus to the world. That's part of what we do. That's part of our responsibility as Christians. We're to be the light in a dark world. And it's not unusual for me when I preach or teach on this passage to talk about that. But as I was thinking about this, I thought, maybe a better way for us to apply this passage right now, this week, this year, this month, maybe for you, is that we also need to remember that we are the recipients of this message. The message of grace is for you and for me. Yahweh is a gracious giver. I don't know what you need, but let me tell you something. You can't take the light into the world if you haven't received the light. You can't take grace unless you've received grace. You cannot take a message that you have not heard and applied and really, really brought into your own life. Talked tonight about grace. We talked a lot about grace. Yahweh is a gracious giver. Do you know who gets grace? There's only one type of person who can receive God's grace, and it's those who don't deserve it. So you might be concerned, like, but man, I've just had such a rough year, or I've had a rough week, or a rough month, and I feel like I'm very distant from God. Oh, good. Then grace is for you. Yeah, but you don't know how much I've sinned, or how much I've fallen, or how much of a failure. Yeah, I know. God does, and grace is for you. The only people who don't get God's grace are the ones who think they deserve it. You cannot earn God's grace. It is only available for those who are undeserving. And as we celebrate the Christmas season, yes, let's take the light of the world into the world. But before that, let's receive the light. And Christmas is this fantastic time of year that we're given. We're given this every year. Every year we come to the end of our year and we're heading into a new year as we finish up the Advent season. And what do? We can get bogged down with all of this and be just tired of Christmas and just ready for it all to end and move on to something else. Or we can receive the light and the grace of Jesus Christ, and we can carry that with us into the new year. So let's do that this week, this month. Let's receive the light and grace of Jesus Christ. Let's take in these things. Let's take some moments away from the busyness and just reflect on Jesus and who he is and what he's done for us. And in those busy times, let's be recipients of the joy that Jesus wants to give us. That's the message that we have here in Zechariah and Elizabeth, and not just here, but throughout the scriptures, and in particular for us today in the story of Christmas. So, all right, I'm going to end it there. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you're receiving all of this well and just enjoying this time of year. We'll come back again next week and talk about joy in our third Sunday of Advent. So until that time, take care and God bless.